I'm going to tell you a secret. You can get free advertising for your business on other people's podcasts. This is Your Business Needs a Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Lee, and the founder of Provision Podcasts. This is the show where I try to convince you in 5 minutes or less how podcasting can help you grow your business and have a little bit more fun. And so if you're ready, let's get into it. All right, welcome to Your Business Needs a Podcast. I am your host, as always, Jay Lee. And reason number 6 why your business needs a podcast, I have to admit, is a little outside of the box. This one is specifically for those of you who are already advertising on other podcasts or are thinking about it. And first of all, if you are doing that or thinking about doing that, I think that's a great decision. As we've talked about on previous episodes, the data shows year after year that advertising on podcasts is particularly effective, more so than other traditional media channels. And so if you've been advertising on other podcasts or have been thinking about doing that, I think that's a great strategic move. And I imagine that your business has been seeing benefits to that. But as I mentioned in the opening, there is actually a way that you can advertise your business on other people's podcasts for free. The way that you can do that is by being a guest on other people's podcasts. There are so many podcasters out there that have shows that are relevant to your business and your particular niche. And most of these shows probably have an interview format where they have guests on who talk about their story and their business and their products and services that they offer. And while there maybe is a small percentage of podcasters who charge to appear as guests on their show, the vast majority of shows have no appearance fees for being a guest on their show. In fact, a lot of times these podcasters, especially if they're podcasting consistently week after week, year after year, are kind of desperate actually to keep finding new guests to have on the show. And so when you're a guest on a podcast, it is basically a free opportunity to advertise yourself, your brand, your business, your services. And in fact, I would suggest that it's actually a much higher degree of exposure that you're going to get as a guest as opposed to running an ad on a podcast. When you're a guest on a show, the entire episode is most likely focused on you and who you are and your story and your successes and your business. And not only that, but they're obviously going to want to publicize that episode because they're trying to grow their podcast too. So they're going to be publicizing that episode and you and your business on their social media platforms, on LinkedIn, to their newsletter, probably multiple times, maybe even creating little clips. And so not only are you going to get exposure to their audience, but then you are able to reshare that content and that episode to your own platform and to your own followers. And it becomes something that you can use to establish your own profile and your own thought leadership, and basically free content for you to reuse as well. Now you might be thinking, well, that sounds great, but how do you get invited to be a guest on a show? Now, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there are whole groups and communities on places like Facebook that are dedicated solely to finding guests and offering yourself to be a guest on other people's podcasts. Now, obviously, you only have so much time. You can't be spending all day trying to get yourself booked as a guest on other people's podcasts. But I would say, even with a minimal amount of effort, you could easily book yourself to be a guest on a podcast, probably at least once a month. Now, caveat, obviously it's much harder to become a guest on a very, very popular show, unless you yourself have a large following or some sort of high profile or particular niche of knowledge that appeals to these shows. Most likely you're not going to be able to get booked on these kinds of shows. But you legitimately may be able to guest on small to medium-sized podcasts in your niche at least once a month if you put just even the minimal amount of effort and time into it. And it's all completely free. And so here's why this is a reason why your business needs a podcast. Because what I'm suggesting to you is that if you have been paying to advertise your business on other people's podcasts or have been thinking about it, great move. But what if you decided to invest time to becoming a guest on podcasts instead for free? And instead, divert that capital to starting your own podcast so that you can get the best of both worlds. You can benefit from advertising on other people's shows, but at the same time, make the investment to start building up your own show and your own audience and your own community that you can advertise to. So go be a guest on other people's podcasts and then start your podcast. Your Business Needs a Podcast is a Provision Podcast production. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a follow, leave us a review, or share this episode with a colleague. And reach out to us if you're ready to look into starting your own podcast. You can find all of our links in the episode description.